She's over me. She's over me. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. I hope you're having a great night. Thank you so much for being here and being a part of the shows. I appreciate it a bunch, more than you could know. And maybe, I guess that's assuming what you know, and how could I know? But I assume that it's more that I, whatever. All right. I'm just glad you're here. Hope you guys are doing great. And this is a pre-record tonight because I actually have to be away from the studio as I'm going to be busy. So I thought I'd make this for you guys so that you had something to hold on to, like at least a picture of the teddy bear you usually hold at night. But I don't know, that's kind of a romantic idea too, isn't it? But anyway, I hope you guys are ready because it's time for bed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are underway here on the Bedtime Stories From Beyond. Again, I'm your host, Brent Thomas. This is a Paranormal Portal production. All right, so welcome everybody again, and I'm sure you guys are still piling in as is usual. Sometimes the notifications don't go out real quick, so I always try to talk a little bit before to give you all a chance to get in here. I had a fortune cookie earlier, and I was just reading what it said. My fortune was, one old friend is better than two new ones. So there you have it. I guess those old friends are worth more. If that's trade-in value or what, I don't know. But anyway, I got a bunch of stories. Hopefully you will find very entertaining. I love reading them. I love bringing them to you, and I hope you love hearing them as much as I love giving them to you. So anyway, it's really late at night. I've been busy doing stuff since I just did the last live show and did a whole bunch of things, and my eyes are kind of glazed right now, but I definitely didn't want to miss a night and leave you guys hanging. So even though it's currently after midnight, that's what it says. I'm still here doing this for you because it's my labor of love. So the first story I got for you tonight is coming from California. That's a decent story, not really, really long. A little long, though. Let's see what's going on in California. It says, when I was 9 in the late 70s, my twin sister and I were playing in our long driveway at the very end near the back side door and garage. Our house is big and old with 2 stories. My parents only used the front part of the driveway to park their cars and section it off by putting up a fence with a gate a little past the middle of the driveway. The garage was at the end and was used mostly for storage. It was a warm, sunny Sunday afternoon, and we were playing in the driveway, and my parents were both in the living room with my father in the dining room table reading through his important papers, and my mother on the sofa reading one of her women's magazines. I forget exactly what we were playing in the driveway because we were really into it, and when out of nowhere we hear a soft, very soft woman's voice calling out, "Excuse me, excuse me." We stopped what we were doing and both looked upward towards the gate where the voice was coming from, and seeing a very pretty youngish woman, about 30, standing there at the fence behind the gate. We both just automatically, not thinking anything of it, walked right up to her. We did notice immediately that she did not look like anyone else we'd ever seen, and that her clothes were kind of a different time, like the 30s or 40s. She had that short waved hair they wore then, a hat with a mesh-like veil covering her forehead, a black skirt suit with matching jacket that you would see in old movies at that time, and she wore black gloves that was also worn by women of that time period. Well, she rested both of her hands on the gate, and she had a really pretty smile with red lipstick, and we both remembered her creamy white skin and green eyes. The lipstick is the only makeup we remember her wearing, and she smelled nice as well, and we both will never forget her perfume. Well, as we were standing there looking up at her in wonderment, because she was a young woman, not an old woman, wearing these old-style clothes with hair and was really pretty, then she asked us both, "Where's your father? Can I please see your father?" We both thought it was really strange, but I managed to tell her, "I'll go get him." And we both go through the backside door and ran into the house and into the living room where my parents were and yelled, "Mom and Dad, there's this really pretty lady in the driveway wearing old-style clothes asking to see Dad." "Dad, come on," I said. "She wants to see you and she's asking for you." Mom, always being the skeptic, said, "It's probably just someone from church." I knew it wasn't, and so did my sister, and for some reason, when my mom said that, I honestly knew in my heart it was a ghost. Strange but true. My sister said she knew upon seeing her that it was a ghost, but wasn't scared. On to the story, my dad gets up and follows us through the house without saying anything, and when all three go out in the backside door into the driveway and the young woman is gone. We told our dad it was true, she was here, and he said, all right, I believe you, but didn't really sound convincing. We looked up and down the street, and there was no sign of this strange woman. To this day, we talk about it. My mom says she also remembers this incident, and it will always be a mystery to us as to who she was. A long-dead relative of my father's coming by to say hello? Someone that we had to do with the house before my parents bought it? We just will never know for sure. But thanks for telling the story. That's pretty wild. It's just kind of this, I don't know, ambiguous meeting of this classical-looking ghost. That's pretty cool. The other thing that's really profound about it is that it's a very solid apparition. I mean, it's not just the wispy kind that you see through. That person was manifest right there. The other weird thing is that she was, it wasn't like in several hauntings where the ghosts don't seem to be as aware of their surroundings. This ghost had its hands resting right on the gate, which they put in as the new owners of the house. So very interesting. I don't know. Strange, but allegedly true. And that's the key. So the next one is coming from Michigan. I got family in Michigan. This past February, I had a strange and somewhat terrifying experience in room 202 of the Little River Casino in Manistee, Michigan. And in this suite, it was my brother and his wife, me and my children, ages 8 and 9. But I woke up around 3:30 in the morning to the sensation of pressure on my side, kind of pushing me down, and I thought it might be one of my daughters pushing me down. And I raised my arm out to try to push off whatever it was on top of me, and I felt something substantial, but definitely not either one of my kids. It was at that time that I began to get frightened. I was lying on my side, so I turned my head and right to my right shoulder to get a glimpse of what was on top of me, and I saw a large, dark funnel of no substantial shape. I heard a mocking laugh, and I struggled to no avail, and I decided to let the entity know they should get off of me in the name of Jesus Christ. The funnel suddenly hit the ceiling and disappeared. There I was, very frightened, hoping it was a dream, and I decided to switch sides of the bed. I woke nobody up, as I felt my sister-in-law would think I was absolutely nuts, and I didn't want to scare the kids, so I tried going back to sleep, and this is when I felt hands all over the front of me, pushing and pulling, and I knew I was sleeping when the second attack began, as the sensations began to wake me up. I cried out, and this woke up my sister-in-law, and she said she looked over at me in bed and saw that I had a dark figure over me with its arms wrapped around me. My brother then heard my cry, turned on the light, and asked me if I was okay, and I told him that I definitely was not okay. My sister-in-law told my brother what I saw, and I told him what I experienced. Unfortunately, we were looking at another night. We were looking at another night in the same room, already paid for. Thus, I didn't sleep and basically played night watchman. I was ready with my camera should the entity return. The only thing that happened was my daughter crying in her sleep, and I could see nothing bothering her from my viewpoint. I would like to clarify that I wasn't on any medications, hadn't drank any alcohol during this whole trip. This is the scariest thing to ever happen to me, and because of what my sister-in-law witnessed, as I cried out, leads me to believe it may be paranormal. My concern is, will other people suffer this same malady in that room? I definitely believe it was malevolent. Another question I'm left with is this the attack from a shadow person? My best friend told me that I should have asked for a different room, but I was too worried the staff would think I was crazy. The Little River Casino is somewhat a new casino, and I'm not aware of any history with that place. Yeah, it doesn't seem to really matter if a place is new or old or, refurbished or whatever. I mean, they're just sometimes our spirits around, and they don't always have to have a reason that makes sense to us. It's just they are there for their own purposes, whatever those may be. I just stepped on something sharp, so I had to pick it up, and it looks like the minion had some chips in here. So there you go. But a very creepy story. Those dark, ambiguous shapes that have obviously an intent and purpose to doing what they're doing. I don't know. I feel for those people going through stuff like that. Okay, I'm looking at this other one that it looks like I somehow skipped. I don't know. This is weird. Okay, no, I didn't read this one. I somehow skipped one, so I'm going to get back to this one, but let me close the Michigan one. All right, I did skip it, so we'll get to it now. It's another sleep paralysis one. Okay. All right, yeah, it sounds pretty profound, actually. Okay. Well, I'll get a load of this, ladies and gentlemen. You want to hear it? Here goes. Guess I'll start the story at the beginning and describe my childhood. When I was 4, my family moved from Florida to a farm in North Georgia. And at the time, it was the 4 of us, and my father, mother, younger brother, and I. The house we moved into was a very old farmhouse built in the 1890, and everything in the place was original, with only the electrical wiring and the plumbing being newer, though from the 60s themselves. The house was the epitome of what one would imagine of a haunted house. Old windows that rattled in the wind, no insulation anywhere, allowing for drafts to come and go as they please, wood floors, walls, and ceilings that creaked constantly, and an old tin roof that leaked in the rain and popped in the sun. We also had several very old outbuildings that were quite creepy as well, though for a little boy, they were absolutely fascinating. We owned a little over 200 acres growing up, and I crawled all over the place. To this day, I don't know if the house had any kind of history, but years later, while cleaning out a back piece of our land, we did discover 20-plus Cherokee Indian burial mounds. Wow. This is yet another fascinating find, as I myself am part Cherokee, though barely 1/16. That said, I doubt they had any influence on our house being more than a mile away, but I will say that I saw a lot of interesting stuff in the woods surrounding them. Honestly, I can say that I truly loved growing up on that farm, but it did not go without its dark history as well. My first account started when I was 6, and really, based on my memory, went throughout my childhood in random succession. Growing up, I had very little fear of anything, being taught that everything in the woods is more afraid of you than you are afraid of it. I would walk through the woods at night without a light. I could hear strange sounds in the house and find them cool, and watch spooky movies and laugh, etc. No, what I feared most as a child was going to sleep. And it wasn't just the nightmares, which were very frequent, but also the after effects of the night as well. Most of the times the nightmares would wake me up in a cold sweat, shaking, or in physical pain, but sometimes I would wake up with a black eye or bloodied lip, and at first my parents would say I probably rolled out of bed and hit the floor or maybe tripped on something while going to the bathroom and didn't remember it. It wasn't until I was 8 that things got a little more serious. Where'd my mouse go? There it is. My parents had different sleep schedules, my brother being in bed by 10 p.m., whereas my mother would stay up until around midnight or so. My father being in bed by 10 p.m., rather. I said brother, but sorry. On one of these nights, she stayed up later than normal. Sorry about that. Watching something on TV, and then, after 1 a.m., she had gotten up during a commercial to go to the kitchen when she had heard something coming up from our bedroom. Me and my brother shared a room, and she stepped into the doorway, and I guess she heard me groaning and crying, so she flicked on the light, which for some reason immediately blew out. I don't remember much about up until the light flashing, which at that point I remember feeling as if my nightmare was real and I was fighting it off of me. I recall my mom screaming for my father, who came down the hall, flashlight in hand, and remember the beam of light hitting my face and him picking me up off the bed. They took me into the bathroom and washed my face, but I guess exhaustion took over because I don't recall anything after that. What my mother told me the next morning sent chills down my spine and gave me my first taste of real fear. She said that when she flicked on the light, it looked like a dark shape had been on top of me and was swinging violently in my direction. She had thought that it might have been my brother. We fought a lot as brothers do, but she said that she could see him asleep in his bed. Since the light flashed off so fast, she said that she couldn't see anything after that except spots, but that when she saw my face, she had been terrorized by what she saw. Looking in the mirror the next morning, I got to see the truth. Black eye forming, dried blood on my nose, a busted lip, and strange scratches along the left side of my face. Obviously, I didn't go to school that next day, but I don't think staying at home helped much either. I was fairly quiet around the house, nobody really speaking about what had happened. Dad out working with the cattle and Mom doing chores around the house, and me watching television. Really, in time, what happened that night faded from everyone's minds, and only on certain occasions do I even think about it. I can say this much, though. Looking back over the years, I've analyzed what happened, and I can be fairly certain of this much. That was no ghost that haunted me, but was only the beginning of what life had to throw at me. Fun. Okay, so I don't know what else this person had thrown at him, but that's where the story ends. Creepy, though. Wow. And so you hear those stories, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of people. And again, I can only represent that this is supposed to be a true story. So, but you hear people talk about things like, well, spirits can't hurt you. They can't hurt you. Well, maybe spirits can't, but there's other things that are spirit kind of things that seem to be able to just fine. They can attack and cause all kinds of problems. And it's certainly truly unfortunate, but apparently it does happen. So, it really bothers me when people make those claims, well, spirits can't hurt you. Because when they're doing that, they're representing a false sense of peace or protection. And that is just not the case. So many people get scratched, choked, and thrown, and God only knows what else. And have things thrown at them. It's just, to make such statements like that is just really, I think, irresponsible. We just don't know what they are for sure. We have ideas. We don't know what they're capable of. We have ideas. But for people to make absolute statements such as what they can and can't do, I think is incredibly irresponsible. So, some people make those statements based on their faith, like, well, if you are truly a Christian, nothing can hurt you. And perhaps that's true. Maybe that's very, very true. that spirituality creates a layer of protection. And I don't mean to discard that or diminish that, but, you know, what if it doesn't matter? What if it really doesn't protect you? What if it's just a belief that it does? Well, belief is very powerful, though. At the end of the day, belief is very powerful. If you have a belief that things like this can't hurt you, maybe they can't, for the most part. But I will say that anybody that has strong convictions like that, but then goes on to challenge spirits or other things, then you're asking for problems. Because at that point, you're engaging. You are creating an engagement with your words and with your energy. And then it can change the rules. So be very careful. So anyway, my 2 cents, whatever that's worth. We're going to Illinois now. It says, what is this? Okay, I don't know for sure how to pronounce this town, but it's in Illinois. It says, I grew up in Lisle, and I'm going to assume that's Lyle, or because Lisley sounds weird, but I'm going to say it's Lyle, but I might be absolutely wrong. So I apologize if I'm misrepresenting that town. It's a smaller suburb compared to Naperville or other surrounding burbs, but in the 30s, it was a farming community, and my grandparents, like most of the growing community members, had a house built in the 50s. Well, my parents and I moved in with them around 1984 when I was just an infant, and I lived there with my parents and grandparents until I was 18 years old. Around the age of 12 was my first experience. I'd stepped into the shower, our bathroom window looked out on the backyard, and we had a shed with a small porch light, a swing, and some small flower beds scattered in the yard. Roughly 5 minutes into the shower, I looked out the window and I saw an older-looking man, thin, dressed in overalls, and holding some sort of tool. He looked tired and his eyes seemed empty, almost sad. He looked right at me without flinching. It was not the stream from a shower or any kind of fog or smoke outside. The shed light was off and all my family were indoors. I looked at him for what felt like forever. In reality, maybe 20 seconds, and I remember kind of gasping and taking a step back from the window, and then he was gone. I finished my shower, explained what happened to my father in the hall, and he went outside and checked everything, garage, shed, behind the shed. Nothing, I was told. I probably just saw fog or something. A few nights later, I was getting ready to make a phone call in my parents' room. Their phone was by the window that looked out over the side of the house, first floor. My father was putting away something in his dresser behind me. I started to dial, waited for the other end to answer, and while waiting, I looked out the window, and there was the farmer again, dressed the same, sad eyes, etc. I gasped. My father turned around and saw him too. He stood there looking at us, and I, of course, had forgotten about my phone call and turned to my father, turned back to the window, and he's gone. The only thing I saw was my father frantically running along the side of the house with a flashlight. Throughout my life, I had a lot of strange feelings in the home. I saw the farmer a few more times. A lot happening living there, but I guess I can save it for another time, and I thank everyone for reading my story. Huh. Very bizarre. Huh. All right. Let's continue on. This is from California. This is a story about a house, and there's many stories about this house I have to tell, and this is just a few of the occurrences, incidents, and sightings that went on in this house within the time that I lived in it with my family. I have also submitted other stories that took place in this house, and I've tried to look into the history of it, only to find that each family's hands it has fallen into all have lost this house and been unable to keep it. It is currently lived in from the time we moved to 5 years later. I've learned that this house has gone through 2 more owners. My family and I moved into this house in the summer of 92, and I remember going to see the house just right before we moved in. When I first walked into the house, a tremendous feeling of hostility overcame me. You could tell the house had been picked up, cleaned as much as the real estate people could to have it viewed. The tile floors were broken. I could tell it had been done purposely, almost like whomever did it had taken a hammer to the tiles. The backyard looked completely isolated, as if no one had cared for it some time. I noticed a small beat-up kids' clubhouse. Something told me to leave it alone and continue to look around the house. And in the time that I was in that house, I felt an overwhelming feeling of uneasiness. It wouldn't be long before I would find out why I felt so uncomfortable and uneasy from the first day I sat set foot in that door. We went about 2 to 3 years without paying attention to things we couldn't explain. Items of clothing disappearing, unexplained noises, our dogs acting strangely. Then things got a bit more serious. I remember one night staying up late playing video games. All the lights were off and that lit up the house. All that lit up the house was a portable screen from the game console I was playing on. I had this feeling like someone was in the room with me. I was laying down on the couch, and it felt like there was someone standing behind me watching me play. I became nervous and quickly turned off my game and hid under the covers. I had the strongest feeling that if I dared take the covers off and looked, I would see something, but was unsure as to what. I forced myself to sleep that night. On another occasion, my mom and brothers had gone to sleep, and my stepdad, Dad, and I were the last ones to go to bed. I turned off the lights and said goodnight to my dad, and he replied back, "Good night." And there was a short pause. Then a loud and deep voice was heard. I did not make out what it said, but my dad heard it too, and I even thought it was him trying to scare me. And I said, "Ha ha, nice try." He told me it had not been him. I think we both got scared and ignored what had happened and just went to sleep. I refused to sleep in my room. After some time, I always told my mom and dad that it was because I liked sleeping on the couch in the living room and having the TV all to myself. That really wasn't true. My room had 2 big windows, and for some time before my dad had that part made into a wall, it had a door that went from my closet into the backyard. Whenever I slept in my room, I hardly ever got a full night's sleep. It was always woken up by sounds that came from out in the back. Sounds that were not my dog because he slept on the other side by the sliding glass doors. It was whispering. I had a fear that someone or something was watching me or waiting to watch me. I always had the strongest urge to pull up my blinds and get it over with, but never found the courage. There was also a shadow in our home. Now, I don't know if it was more than one or just that one, but it was all over the house. I saw the shadow. My mom and dad and second youngest brother, cousin, they all saw it. It would just walk by. Many times I saw it through the side of my eye, but it would be out in the front of the house as well, and I think my dog would see it too because he would bark uncontrollably like there was someone there. This shadow never did anything to really scare me or the others, but it made its presence known to us. My second youngest brother was given the back room that was right next to mine, and he was getting older and wanted his own space, and it was in the middle of the night. We were all asleep, and suddenly I woke up to my brother running out of his bedroom crying out for my mom. I saw him pass by and got up to see what happened to him. And I remember him telling my mom as he cried that he had opened his eyes and saw a white cat-like animal at the foot of his bed, and it was staring at him. My mom tried calming him down by telling him it could have been a pillow. She comforted him, and he fell asleep in her room. As I made my way back to the couch, I looked towards the small hallway that led to me and my brother's room and just froze. I just could not bring myself to go and check. As our time in that house grew close to an end, more and more things became visible. In the restroom that was near the kitchen, an image began to show on the green marble floor. It was the outline of an angel, and it was so clear from the head to the wings, and we even took pictures to show a friend once. Outlines of faces started forming on the wood in the living room, and it was no tricks of the mind. We all saw them really clearly without having to point them out to each other. They seemed like demonic faces to me. Right before we moved, another angel image appeared on the other bathroom's white marble floor. It was clear as the one in the green marble floor. My stepdad lost that house. The timing could not have come any sooner, and we were all overwhelmed, and the hostility that came the home had was contagious on many occasions. There were times that I didn't even know myself anymore, and I wish I could say that was the last I saw of the house on West Elmwood Avenue. You see, this house follows me in my dreams. I've found myself back inside of it numerous times with horrible things waiting, horrible things that awaken me to this day and rob me of my sleep. Yeah, some houses are just dark. Some houses are just really dark places. That's really unfortunate. Don't know. Could be some history there. Could be the land. You never know. But really creepy. All right, the next one is California. This one's not really long. It's pretty quick. This is a dream that I had a long time ago when I was probably 9 or 10 years old. I'm an adult now of 26 years of age. However, the dream starts like this. I was in the living room with my family on a Saturday night, and I was so happy. And since I was the baby of the family, I was standing in front of the couch trying to get all the attention while my family members were sitting on the couch. The way my mom's house is designed makes it easy to see all the way into the bedroom if you're standing in the living room. Well, I was chatting away and all the lights were on, except for one in the bathroom. I was looking in the bedroom and I saw a girl. In the dream, I wasn't scared, nor did I pay much attention to the girl. She was pacing in circles slowly and was motioning for me to come to her. Well, I would look and then turn around and continue chatting with my family, ignoring her, and she would sigh and look down in disappointment and continue pacing. She would stop and look at me again and motion for me to come to her. And I remember seeing the desperation in her eyes and the pain when I would just turn away and ignore her. She was young and she looked like a teenager from the 80s, and what makes it weird is that I did have this dream in the 80s. The girl was blonde and curvy. In the dream, I was so happy, and this girl was trying really hard for me to go to her. The next day, I mentioned my dream to my mom, and my sister overheard me, and turned out that she had the exact same dream and at the same night. I was amazed. I was not so supervised, though, to have had that dream back then. Supervised? Why would you be supervised? I don't get that. Maybe it was surprised. To have had that dream back then, and there was always paranormal activity going on in that house around that time, and I would hear footsteps and feel scared being in the bedroom. However, I do remember that the noises would always occur around 4:30 and 5 a.m. every day. I would be prepared with the lights on and the television on. My mom would leave to work around 4 in the morning and leave me with my older sister. It was impossible to get a good sleep back then. If anyone can tell me what they think the dream meant related to what was happening at my house back then, I would love to hear the feedback. It almost seems like maybe the girl spirit was trying to warn you of something, or say, hey, don't do that. Whatever you're doing, don't do it. Yeah, it's tough to understand. I mean, again, it's all speculation, right? We just don't know all the time what's going on or what's trying to be shared, what information. Hauntings are spooky and they're really awkward, but I think for the most part, they're just spirits trying to say, hey, we're here, and maybe share some kind of information with you. But it's just hard because they can't just go, hey, by the way, don't flush the toilet on in the basement because it'll flood, or something like that. You just don't know, is what I'm saying, I guess. All right, the next story. This one's not real long either. This is from New Mexico. My wife and I just opened our camper that was parked in our driveway in the back when the tornado sirens went off on May 31st in Minneapolis. We had the cover of this full-size camper off and laying on the lawn, and we quickly ran in to see the forecast on the local channel. We're expecting tornadoes and deadly winds as the storm approached Minneapolis, according to the weather station. My wife and I quickly jumped into action. I ran out and raised the ladder and quickly grabbed the protective cover for the camper and dragged it to the side of the camper, spending much time in the BWCA and wilderness area of the Midwest. I took a moment and stepped into the alley to view the darkening sky. Wow, we had a storm brewing that we've not had for a long time. The static electricity was so great that the hairs were standing up on my arms, and at this time, I knew we were in for a light show. My wife quickly ran in to check on her mother. Her dear husband was in the hospital, and she was really worried about her being alone, and I ran up the ladder, started dragging the camper cover up over the side, and when the air got really still, the sky turned black and I could see the approaching storm clouds, velocity growing and turning dark as night. All of a sudden, the ladder fell to the ground and I turned, and there was little or no wind. I was stranded as the black clouds approached closer and closer, and I started calling for my wife, who was on the phone trying to get in touch with her mom in the house. She could not complete the call. The stereo turned up to the maximum volume, and all our effort to turn down the stereo was fruitless. Because of the volume of the stereo, she could not hear me calling for her to help as the dark clouds approached, while I was stranded 12 feet in the air. Finally, as the storm got closer, she came running out to tell me of her terrifying experience with the stereo and noticed me stranded on the camper. Though I have been in many scary predicaments, both in my everyday life and the investigations we've conducted, this particular event made me feel really vulnerable and helpless to the powers that be. My question would be, does the static electricity create and intensify paranormal activities that exist with a powerful storm? Does the fear and vulnerability that people feel during a great storm make them sensitive to paranormal activity? We're a ghost hunting team. Could an entity follow us home from a previous investigation? Yes, it could. Could it draw strength from the storm? Yes, it could. Though it could be explained away easily due to the storm, the wind was not enough to hinder me pulling a large cloth cover up, but was strong enough to topple a metal ladder? Great questions. But yeah, I think storms, it's granted, everything you see in Hollywood with the paranormal has to do with some kind of thunderstorm and electricity and lightning and stuff. But honestly, I think that it really ionizes the air, and something about that ionized charge seems to fuel the possibilities for paranormal activity. It seems to. Again, I'm speaking in generalities because we just don't know for sure. I mean, we don't even know what energy these things are, although they appear to at least affect electromagnetic polarities in their area, as these entities come and go. That's why you have, EM field meters will trigger when allegedly a ghost is nearby, and doesn't seem to be much explanation for that other than that they appear to somehow be involved in that change in the energy. But it's really, really pretty curious, to be honest with you. And again, I don't pretend to know, but I think there's got to be some sort of correlation with that, because that's some pretty potent stuff. So we're at about 40 minutes right now, so I can pull open a couple more and go through them with you as well. And that will about wrap up our journey for this evening. So let's see what this one is. This one's from Michigan. I got family in Michigan. That's just a code for me reaching out to my cousin and his wife, who are always listening. All right. My parents weren't sure if they wanted to sell their beautiful bungalow for a cement brick ranch on Mulberry Street. The house belonged to my Uncle Al, who had recently passed away, and the family offered to sell this house to them at a very low cost. I wasn't too pleased at first, and I was always afraid that it was haunted, though it really isn't. It seems now, though it really isn't. It seems now, as it had such a rich past in our family's bloodline. It was built in the 1950s, along with many other identical houses on the block, and my grandparents were the first residents. My grandmother had 8 children, my mom being the youngest, and one of the 5 still living today. Not to mention, my grandfather had died of cancer when my mom was 8. She found him black and blue, lying inside his bed, but still alive. My grandmother also died of cancer and lived her last months in what is now my bedroom. My Uncle Jim, one of the oldest, was found dying, so to speak, on a couch in the living room, and he died in the hospital. My Uncle Al is the only other one to actually spend his last few moments in the house before facing death. But my Uncle Dave died only a few months before he did. They were really close. Our house at the time was just a busy street away from my uncle's house, and the move would be easy and rather inexpensive. We would get more for our cute little house than we would have to pay out later, but it was safe to say we mostly just wanted to stay put. One night I had a strange dream. I was inside of my Uncle Al's house. It was all dark except for his computer room, which now contained a bed, dresser, and some luggage, and my parents. They were talking, and I was thirsty. I made my way into the kitchen. "Is that you, Dave?" My first reaction was fear. I could never miss that voice. It was my Uncle Al, and I froze right there in the doorway to the living room. There he was, sitting in his chair with his legs up, his newspaper open, and a full head of hair. His pipe was hanging out of his mouth, and I could smell his tobacco. Well, I didn't say a word. "Dave, is that you?" I stood there, not able to move. Not that I wanted to. I was honestly so terrified. You don't even know. All I could think about was how dead he was, how seriously dead. I watched his coffin as it was sealed inside a tomb forever, in a wall, in a cemetery really far away. But there he was, clad in dark blue jeans, his only white tennis shoes, black t-shirt, and a pocket on the breast of his pipe. The glasses, the paper, the chair. I could have told him that I loved him or that I miss him, but instead I remained silent and hoped that it was all just a dream, that I wasn't really seeing a dead guy, even though he was my uncle, sitting in the living room asking me if I was yet another dead guy. Again, my uncle. And not looking up from his paper once. I don't think he knew it was me. My Uncle Al was my favorite. We were really close. He spoiled me and I loved him to death. I visited him frequently. We talked in the backyard about politics, and we both loved to play with Furby. But he thought I was Uncle Dave. At one point, I mustered the courage to bolt straight out of there and into the computer room, at which point I tried to explain to my parents that Uncle Al was reading the paper, but I woke up mid-explanation and realized that it must have been a dream. I wasn't even in the right house. I stepped out of my room for a glass of water and found myself face to face with my mom, who also seemed a little out of place. We just looked at each other, and I just had the strangest dream. She just stared at me for a moment and then responded, "Yeah, me too. I had a dream about Al. He was sitting in his living room reading the paper. He wanted to know how I like his house." Wow. That's pretty intense. Huh. Well, if they're dreams, I've had dreams like that. That's kind of how the people that I loved and have passed have appeared to me. I think there's something really profound to it. I do think they do visit us in our dreams. I think those are experiences. Those are experiences that are really easy for the spirits to manifest, because we're in the dream state. Everything is open and possible. So I think that's pretty incredible. I don't know. It's really a bizarre thing, though, I suppose, when you think about it. And the fact is those dreams are so incredibly lucid. They are so powerful. I'll pull open 2 more because we're only at 45 minutes. So a couple more, and I'm going to wrap it up because I'm tired. I need beauty sleep. Look at me. I hope I didn't open a really long one. No, that one's not too bad. And how's this one? Hopefully it's not too bad either. All right, I'll read these through, and that should be about close to an hour. So let's see where we end up. Illinois is this one. When I was 5, I got a great rabbit that we named Elvis. Well, thank you very much. He was a lop rabbit, L-O-P-P, okay, with tan ears and patches of fur, a mainly white-colored, and a minimal amount of black fur. I spent all my time with him except school, meals, and sleeping, and he would run around my legs in circles, giving out little happy grunts. And as I aged, he did too. He was still running around, nails clacking on our basement floor, just like a happy-go-lucky bunny he was. And one day when I was 9 3/4, I was talking about what we would do with him when he passed away. I then went to my basement to play video games, and I looked over at his cage and saw him laying against the front of it. I went over to pet him, but I saw his eyes were closed. Being that he was 7 years old, which is a long life for a lop rabbit, I knew he'd passed away. Less than half an hour after I played with him last. My family was very sad, and we got him cremated and buried his ashes in our backyard. I cried for the next couple of nights, and I guess he saw that I was, and gave me signs that he was okay. I had dreams about him, as well as the rest of my family, and I occasionally heard the clinking of his toenails in our basement. One dream that I remember, though, is vaguely remembered. It was the night after his death. I was playing with him again in the basement, though in my dream, I still knew he was in heaven, and I just felt like he was okay. A couple of months later, I got a new guinea pig named Coco. She was nice, and she always liked it when I was around, and the only thing bad I noticed was that she wouldn't walk into the area where Elvis's cage was. Around the end of her life, though, I didn't know it was, she started to lick my thumb when I pet her. When we had her for 7 months, she was acting a little weird, so we took her to the vet, and she had an upper respiratory system infection. After this, I made sure that I played with her more often and checked that she was eating and what she was eating was safe for her, and only 9 months after we got her, she died. I had no idea she would because it was so sudden, but earlier that day, I just felt that we needed to take some pictures of her with us, and then only an hour after the last picture, she started to suffocate in my hands, making weird shrieking and choking sounds, and we prayed for her as she left our world, and she went as peacefully as she could. The next couple of days, I had dreams of her, and I'm in my basement. I heard squeaking sounds and occasionally felt something on my thumb, which I expected was her spirit. To this day, I haven't experienced anything, but I still pray for both of them. Wow. Our pets, we love them. This one's from Alabama. This story is about a rather small abandoned town. This town is called Old Dora. Now, I know I've mentioned this town before, but in another story, I only talked about what was going on inside the old Methodist church in this town. This time I'm going to tell you some of the things that have happened in and around the other buildings around Old Dora. I guess we'll first start off with the old furniture store. Me and my cousin Sean had been ghost hunting a few weeks back, so we decided to go and check out some of the old buildings in the forgotten town. So we hopped into my car and drove down there. We parked in front of the old furniture store. We couldn't go to the top floor. It was falling in, and we didn't want to risk having it fall on us, so we went back behind the building to find an open basement door. And That's always bad. We walked inside and there was an instant chill in the air. Well, we started walking around trying to communicate with the spirits and such, and then I walked into the middle of the basement and there was nothing around me that I could have snagged myself on. I have a wallet chain, and as I was standing there looking towards the stairs that went to the first floor, I felt a tug on my wallet chain. I looked back to see if it was Sean, but Sean was on the other side of the room. I looked down in time to see my chain hovering in the air beside my waist, and then it fell back into place. I told Sean about it excitedly, so we decided maybe to go upstairs to the first floor and see if we could see anything. So I started walking up the stairs, but as soon as I reached the top one, Sean goes, "Whoa." And then he jumps down and starts running towards the back of the room. I asked him what it was, and he said he saw a black shadow-looking figure crouching down, and as soon as he noticed it, it took off, but there was nothing in the room and nowhere it could have hid. There is a building right beside the furniture store, but this place is locked tight. Well, we decided to joke around, and so I knocked on the wood that they had placed over the windows and said, "Anybody home?" And as soon as I finished this sentence, something knocked back at us. It couldn't have been somebody messing around because this building has been locked up since the town was first abandoned. That, and it's locked up so securely, I doubt anyone could have gotten inside. Now for our last portion of the story, the train station. The top floor of this building is gone completely, rotted away. So we shimmied our way over to the stairs leading down to the basement. The stairs looked like something out of a horror movie. They were tilted to the side, and we walked down there to find that the floor was now nothing more than a huge pile of rubbish. I hopped over onto this old mattress and stared up at the large hole in the ceiling, which would have been the first floor. And suddenly, from the opposite direction of the door, meaning whatever did this was on the other side of the very large hole no one could get across, I'm just standing there and I hear these footsteps. Soft at first, but as they neared the large hole, they got heavier. Then an old magazine fell from the hole and landed at my feet. It was an old time magazine. Well, that pretty much wraps up some of the things that happened in that old abandoned town. Hope you liked it. Be safe and happy hauntings. Wow, good stories. I like them all. Keeps me asking questions. All of them do. They all cause questions like, what's going on? What is this all about? What are the dynamics going on here? What are we missing? And, well, I hope you guys enjoyed it too. So thank you all for being here. I love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day. And remember to laugh as much as you can. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me. So take care, everybody, and sweet dreams.